Each time the government grows, and it's been growing at a record pace, the price you have to pay to create the life that you want and the life you've been working hard for goes up and up and up. In the name of all sorts of pleasant sounding words like fairness, like equality. But look what it's done for Europe.
That's right.
Europe has been following this type of mindset for 30, 40 years and on and off for their entire existence. Since 1970, all of Europe has created 5 million new jobs. We've created 50 million.
Wow.
Why in the world would we want to emulate what they're doing over there? Now, one of the things that has been a little bit controversial about my book, The War on Success, is a chapter called God is Not a Socialist. And sometimes the truth is just controversial, right? Let me hit a couple of things, and then you've got to dig into this, because this has never happened in recent years where we have those who work in the ministry defending socialism in the name of God. Number one, when God created the universe, He became officially the first innovator and entrepreneur of the universe. And He said, as He looked back on creation, this is good. He didn't say this is a bad thing, or look how selfish I've been for creating all of this. He said this is good, and He said please imitate me. And so when we imitate God by being creative, resourceful, when we are industrious, when we are service-minded, when we help others, when we go the extra mile, we are imitating God, and that gives Him great pleasure. There are 9 words that sum up what socialism is about as compared with the Bible. And it's very easy to remember. Socialism is about taking. The Bible is about giving. Now there are a couple of commandments, a couple of my favorite commandments, although I like them all. The 10th and the 8th in particular. The 10th commandment says thou shalt not covet. The 8th says thou shalt not steal. Now, as far as I can tell, and I did a bit of research on it, these are commandments and not suggestions. Then we can move on to sowing and reaping. I wish I had more time, I really do. But Jeff, you said I only had an hour and a half, right? Sowing and reaping. Here's what happens with socialism. You have one person who reaps but didn't sow, and you have another person that sows but doesn't get to reap. That's upside down. And by the way, there's all this discussion of, is such and such technically a socialist? It doesn't matter because it's an attitude. Socialism is an economic system, but before it becomes an economic system, it becomes an attitude, a state of mind within a large enough people. Do you know that there are more socialist states around the globe that have become socialist through voters rather than through armed soldiers? It happens through evolution more than it happens through revolution. Leviticus 19:15, preferential treatment is required in socialism. What does Moses say about it? No partiality for who? He says the poor or the rich. That's the original standard of fairness. Not that one person, when I grew up, you had the same rules. Everybody started the same line. Everybody was treated identically, as best as humanly possible. It'll never be perfect, but if you tried to manipulate the rules by giving one person 4 strikes instead of 3, by letting his brother be the umpire, you know what we call that? Yeah, we call it fixing, cheating. It's amazing. That word, that description right there, what I just described, is now today sometimes called fair. You have to watch out for these amazing word games. Profit is dirty. Socialists say profit is dirty. That's not what the Bible says. Profit is the natural, God-endorsed way of sharing the wealth. That's what profit is. Your success as a mother or father or as a worker blesses others. Say it. My success blesses others. There is not a deficit of success opportunities out there. You and everybody standing here can be as successful as you want. The pie is not a certain size. The pie can be expanded, expanded, expanded. And you know what? When we want to run out of room in that oven, we can go put it in another oven. We can bake pies all night long. one of the biggest myths is that there's only so many pieces. But they have to have that. If there's only so many pieces, then if you get a big piece, then my piece is smaller. They have to present that as the truth, even though it's not. Counterfeit compassion. Couple more, and then I want to close you out with something that I think you'll remember. Counterfeit compassion. When I teach this to teenagers, I put up on the whiteboard in my office, socialism, and then I put equals compassion. And they look at me strange. And then I draw a line through the equal sign. And I said, socialism does not equal compassion. Socialism is counterfeit compassion. It has a slight resemblance of the real thing, but upon closer examination, you see that it's a fraud. God intended for compassion to be person to person, voluntary. And what happens with socialism, is that the giver gets robbed of giving out of the joy of his own heart. And the recipient gets infused with a false sense of entitlement, leading to dependence on big government. And as sort of an aside, have you noticed that the bigger government grows, the smaller the influence of God in society? And you can look at it the other way around. Everywhere on the planet, secularization has preceded socialization. Bottom line, socialism has never worked. The Bible has never failed. If we get back to the basics, we'll start seeing the fruits of that. If I had more time, Jeff Foxworthy helped me put together a little piece. It's called You Might Just Be a Socialist. But since we're running short on time, I'll leave that for the book. But I do have a quiz for you. It's a quiz about vision, because that's why I felt I had no choice but to write this book and to speak about this message, having never done this before in my life, speaking on political matters of the government. But I've become a huge fan of the founders. Are there any other fans of the founders? But how much do you really know about the founders? Let's take a little quiz. I'm going to read a phrase, and you're going to say either Obama or you're going to say founders. All right, let's practice real quick. Obama. Obama. Founders. Founders. Okay, I'm going to be talking about a vision. Government dependence. Obama. Self-reliance. Founders. Charity must be forced. Obama. Voluntary charity. Founders. Something for nothing. Obama. Something for something. Founders. Reap what others sow. Obama. Reap what you sow. Founders. Pursuit of security. Obama. All right, it was a little iffy on that one. Reap what you... Pursuit of happiness. Founders. Equal outcomes. Obama. Equal opportunity. Founders. Right comes from the state. Obama. Right comes from God. Founders. Free markets. Founders. Government-run business and intervention. Obama. High taxes. Obama. Low taxes. Founders. Big government. Obama. Limited government. Founders. Global citizenship. Obama. U.S. citizenship. Founders. Live free. Obama. Secular society. Obama. God-centered society. Founders. Values community over individual. Obama. Values individual over community. Founders. Tolerance among citizenry. Obama. A little iffy on that one. Virtue among citizenry. Founders. Diversity regardless of performance. See? Gotta hit the books. Performance regardless of diversity. Founders. I've had to throw a tricky one in there. Now, the current administration, I give you a A- on that, so you know there's a little bit of homework to do. The current administration, they say they know better. But I've put together a plan that I think will show that we know better. Follow along with me. Let's minimize platitudes and maximize authentic principles. If you agree, say hear, hear. Hear. Let's override our feelings and reactivate our reason and logic. Hear.